All right, big guy. Oh boy. Good. All right, so just thought I'd show you a little bit about what we've been working on and playing with. Just put him in a bit for the first time today. It'll be a while before he's working off the bit, but he can just wear it and play with it and kind of get a sense of what it's all about. You'll use it like a stick of gum for a while. But you'll probably wear it for, 3-4 days or something. Obviously not all day, but while we're working. Just to kind of get the feeling for it before I start doing anything from the bit. Just doing some of the groundwork stuff that I do with all of them. Just to kind of get him the understanding of how to use his body a little bit, how to manage himself a little bit in situations where he's a little uncomfortable or a little uncertain. Good boy. Try to get him the understanding of how to move through his body more and not just kind of be restricted and pulled in the front and kind of tight. So get a little bit of energy in the walk, start to create a little bit of a bend in his body. He'll have moments where he's going to kind of toss his head and play with that as he gets his tongue over the bit and around the bit and tries to sort out what that's all about. Be a little bit distractible probably today. But here when he starts to really walk through the body, a little bit more push from the hind legs, starts to really push his neck out and then want to stretch down like that. Really to access the back muscles, get the back lifted up a little bit, get his core muscles engaged a little and stretch down over the top line and really start to develop and activate that chain of muscles that we want to continue to develop once we start into the riding part, so that he uses himself a lot more efficiently, a lot more effectively, and starts to travel more on, because of the looseness in the muscles and the body, starts to travel a lot more on the suspension system, the muscles, the ligaments and tendons, and not kind of stiff and braced and pounding away on all the joints of his body, which is a pretty common thing. Good boy. So just giving him the idea of kind of being a little bit aware of the energy in that kissing noise, the energy in our own bodies and responding to that. To go forward. Yeah, good. Good. Following the rein around a little bit, bending through the neck, bending through the body. Just getting an overall idea of how to move in a little bit more fluid and efficient way of actually bending through the body, following the rein, moving the shoulders. And again, following the rein a little bit into me, moving the shoulders, bringing the energy up. So just in the beginning, getting him a little bit more focused on what it is that we're doing, and just kind of putting a little bit more thought into the things that he's doing and not just kind of going through the motions and being distracted by a whole bunch of things. Keeping in mind that he's very young, so we have to, allow for the fact that his attention is going to wander. He's got a attention span like a little bit like a goldfish at the moment. And that's okay, he's just a baby, but we pick up on the rein here, direct the focus a little bit to the inside hind, step it over and across, take the shoulders the other way. And really it's really about just giving him a sense of of where his feet are and how his body can move, and that everything is all connected. And he's starting to, settle into the work quite a bit more. I wouldn't say that he's a spooky horse, but he can be fairly reactive to things. Good boy. Especially things that kind of catch him a little bit by surprise. So just introducing, things like a little bit more energy here and not directing it at him. Good for you. But starting to give him the understanding that when these things happen and when there's things that concern him or bother him or the energy becomes pretty high, that he can find a way himself to manage that instead of running off across town. He finds a little bit of softness in his body, a little bit of a bend, a little bit of coming into and facing the things that are concerning for him, and giving him the sense of being a little bit more in control of these situations than always having to have us there holding his hand and guiding him and really kind of micromanaging everything. Because at some point when you do it like that for too much, you get to a point where your management isn't enough to override what's really bothering them. So it's good that he has the sense that when things start to really escalate, he knows he can look to us for guidance. But first of all, it's nice if he can check in with himself and see if this is something that he can manage. And again, it's just some energy that's going on in his environment. I'm not chasing him with the whip, and I'm not trying to give him the sensation that it's something to be afraid of, nor do I want to just wave it around like a maniac until he stops his feet and freezes in place. The old kind of sacking out idea where you wave a bunch of scary shit around until they stop moving, because typically what that produces is a horse that's frozen and shut down and just kind of blocked out all the scary stuff until the day comes when they can't block it out anymore, and you get a huge explosion and somebody gets hurt. So it's more of using the tools and giving him the ability to find a way to take a deep breath, find a softer, easier, more comfortable way of going that feels better in his body, but also feels better in his mind. And then in the situations where he gets a little bit worried, he starts to search for these things on his own. And then he has some ability and some tools in his toolbox to manage himself a little bit more. And he doesn't always require us to be constantly holding his hand and trying to protect him. Shh. 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 Right, good boy. So then when you go to situations or places where things are a little unfamiliar to him, such as a show or something, that he has the knowledge that when he comes into an uncomfortable situation, oftentimes instead of running from that discomfort, they go to it and find a little peace within themselves, because he has the understanding and knowledge that he can manage some of these situations. But also knowing that if he were to, during the course of this kind of work, in the beginning, when he has something that really bothers him and triggers him and he starts to escalate more and more, that we can kind of redirect his focus and his attention by being able to move the hindquarters and then the shoulders. So we can put him in a bit of a pattern that helps him find that relaxation and that letting go. So that when you do go to a new place, a new show or whatever, and there's something scary there, and if it becomes too much for him, we can give him a bit of guidance and put him in a pattern that's familiar to him, that helps him find this here, this relaxing, letting go, and finding a softness in his body that allows him to then think a little bit more, change from his nervous system being in a really up and sympathetic state, where he's tense and wanting to run, and put him in a little bit more of a parasympathetic, where he can relax and think and digest what he's seeing and feeling, and become a little more comfortable in that situation. Good boy. Good. Being able to watch that. Hindquarters. Yep. Don't run through. And if he gets a little strong in the hand there, you can back him up a step or two just to help him understand that in the riding part he can go to the bit, but not run through it. Yep. Be able to move the shoulders here. Yes. Good boy. Good. We can go a little bit then in a bit of a riding position from when we start to work in hand and explain things to him here and have him start to understand the difference between energy and intention. So if I bring my energy up and I want him to go a little bit, but my intention isn't to scare him or to make him overreact, I just want to go with him, bring my energy down, and he follows that. Bring the energy up, bring the energy down. So if he gets the feeling that we're going here together, and I'm in a bit of a riding position, I can move the shoulders over, pick up on the inside rein. Focus on the shoulders here. Pick up on the inside rein, come a little bit across the neck. Ask this shoulder to step over and across. Good. And then to walk forward, use my hand where my leg would be. Shoulder. Bring my rein all the way around and focus a little bit towards this inside hind. Step the hind over. Now the shoulders when he gets a little. Good. And forward again. So all of the things that we're going to be asking him to do when we do get on his back, one, through this kind of work and this way of moving. Yep, I know it's a little harder this side. Yep. Good. Yes. Bring him a little bit into a right bend here. And just introducing to him the idea that the way my body goes, he starts to follow. So I ideally don't have to pull on the reins to pull his head one way to make a turn, but rather he steps through his body with some energy from the hind leg because he's moving forward with a bit of energy. And I position my body. Yep, good. I position my body into a right turn, turn my shoulders to the right, and just try to follow that bend with my rein and not create it. Right now, because he doesn't understand it, we have to create it a little bit. But ideally, down the road, these things will come from his body doing what our body is indicating to him. So then we get to go and work with him in a way that we're working a little bit more together. Good. And not necessarily the feeling that we have to make him do things by poking him in the ribs with our spurs or pulling on his face and creating a bunch of tension in him, which then creates some imbalance. Yes. And creates some worry, and then sometimes some panic. So again, in this direction, bring my rein out this way, turn to the left, keep him walking, turn to the left, pick up on the rein and move the shoulder over as he falls in. Good. To help him find his balance again. Good. Again, energy up. And energy down. Good. Shoulders again. Energy up. When we bring the energy up and put him into a trot, then letting him trot on his own till he breaks out of it. Let him walk a bit. And then back into trot again. Let him go on his own. Right. So he starts to get the idea at this stage of his training that he's a little bit more responsible for staying in that gait that we asked for until we ask for something different. So not putting him in the trot and then being so happy that we got the trot that we keep kissing and clucking to him so we don't lose the trot, because then we're just kind of nagging him and making a whole bunch of background noise that eventually he will tune out. But rather just giving him the idea that the expectation is that he takes a little bit of responsibility for that. Good for you. And he stays in that trot. Until we ask for something a little different. And at the same time, keeping in mind that he is very young and that we can't expect too much. So trying to get that trot, especially to the right, because it's a little bit more difficult for him to bend and kind of maintain that through his body position. But trying to bring him back to a walk before he feels he needs to, and not expecting that he's going to stay on the trot on his own for 10 circles, because it's a little unrealistic at this point. Good boy. Good. And just trying to introduce a lot of different things for short periods. So not drilling the same thing over and over again and boring him half to death. It's just little short spurts of different things. Introduce different things to him, different feelings, different ways of going. Yeah, good. Good for you. And again, it's not necessarily using all of these things because he's a super spooky horse, but it's just to give him the understanding of when there's different things going on in the environment or different things around him, or on whatever side of him, just kind of cementing that idea more and more that he can manage himself. And using these types of things now when you don't necessarily need them, but just really confirming that idea to him so that when the time comes that something bigger does happen, whenever that may be, that he has the knowledge of what to do with it. So trying to give him some of the answers before the questions are asked. What to do with his body, how to put a bit of thought into it, how to carry himself, how to look for that way of going that feels better, that allows him to move a little bit more fluid through the body. Yes. And just generally how to feel better about the things he's doing, how to feel really good from the inside out. So we're not just kind of putting him in a position and making him do things that he really doesn't have an understanding of. He's just sort of going through the motions and kind of doing the things that we ask of him, but he really doesn't know why, or he really doesn't have the feeling in his body of how it feels to move that way. There you go. How to really bend and let go. So it turns in one direction here to the right. He has to contract the right side of his rib cage, the right side of his body, and stretch the left side. And to really slow that down and get that feeling. Yes. Yes, good. So just asking him here, more so in this direction, where he kind of wants to drop this inside shoulder, the right shoulder, and kind of lean into me. I'm asking him to pick that shoulder up and step the right foot in front of the left foot and stay moving. Good. So he becomes a little bit more balanced in the body and goes through the turn a little more balanced over all 4 feet and bending through the body and not just leaning into the turn like you would if you were on a bicycle. Yep. And that's something that'll just be an ongoing thing. Every horse has one side that's easier than the other. We're just reminding the right shoulder, good. And then when he gets a little bit more in the idea and the posture of carrying himself a little bit more evenly like that, and the shoulders start to come up in the front, and he starts to shift the weight a little bit back towards the hindquarters. When the shoulders elevate a little bit like that, then they get out of the way of the ribs, and then he can bend through the ribs a little bit better, or easier. Very hard to bend a horse correctly through the body if they're heavy on the forehand and blocking themselves from moving. And just so he doesn't get a little bit too daydreamy and fall asleep, back into a little bit of forward. Just find a little bit of energy in the body again. Working even a little bit here, even though it's more difficult because he's going quicker and the balance changes when the speed goes up. So working on just moving that right shoulder over a little bit as much as is possible at this stage, but just working at a distance here of kind of picking that shoulder up, keeping it a little bit out on the circle. Yeah. and encouraging that bend through the right side of his body, even though he's going a little quicker. So when the speed goes up, the balance changes. The things that you're working on in the walk get amplified, obviously, in the trot, and again in the canter. So spending a lot of time slowing it down and explaining it and just working on the very basics of the basics, yes, is what starts to bring all of that together. Yes. Yep. Good. Pick up on the rein, get the hindquarters, shoulder, forward. Pick up on the rein, the hindquarters, shoulder, forward. Pick up on the rein, hindquarter, aha. And then just a little moment to kind of process that and think about it. Kind of, catalog those feelings. There's a deep breath, so he's kind of starting to feel that a little bit. Think about that. Connect the feelings in his body to the feelings that he has going on in his mind, and really start to feel it like deep down inside of his body, so that it doesn't just become some sort of movement that we're going through and some tricks that we're doing that kind of on the surface look kind of neat, but that it sinks in really down in deep and it stays in there. And then it's always there if he has time off or if he has a break or, whatever happens, but that information is still there. Just swatting some flies off of him and stuff, just, kind of little things that while he's having a little bit of a moment of soak time, that we can kind of help take the flies off and make him a little more comfortable and be a little more friendly. And then if he feels he needs to walk off, he can walk off. It's just giving him the moments when he needs to rest or should rest. Yes. Good boy. Good. Yep. Yes. Yeah, that's it. Good boy. And sometimes just having an object to go around kind of gives them a little bit of a visual reference, especially on their stiffer side. Just gives them something to actually understand why it is they're doing what they might be doing. So to bend around the barrel is a little easier. Sometimes a little more understandable for them than just kind of going around the person on the ground, where it doesn't really seem to be much need for that. Yep. Then being aware of that shoulder again and just reminding him that's it. And the slower he can go, we get a little bit of that crossing of the legs, the bending in the body, and then when we walk out from that, oftentimes the tendency is then to lower the head, stretch over the back, and really again activate those muscles that we want to strengthen. Now it's hard for them to engage the core like that for long periods of time in the beginning. It's just like, developing any other muscle. It takes time, takes a lot of strength to be able to push the neck out and down and not fall on the forehand and still feel like you're keeping your balance. So for him to be able to maintain a fairly regular rhythm in the walk and stretch down like that and soften and really let go without losing his balance and then scrambling to catch up to himself. It takes a lot of concentration and a lot of strength. So oftentimes you'll see the head come down for a bit. They start to feel like they lose their balance a little, and then the head will pop back up while they regain their balance, and then they'll do it again. So it's just that repetition over and over, helping them understand what it is they're looking for, helping them build that strength. Good boy, good. Working side to side. Yeah. Lots of direction changes and changes of bend, change of flexion. The bend being in the body, flexion being in the neck and the jaw, and the pull. So he starts to really work through both sides of the body a little bit more. Has to change the bend and the flexion, obviously, a new inside, a new outside, contract a different side of the body, stretch the other side of the body, start to change his balance each time. And because it's changing a lot, keeps him a little bit more engaged with us as well. So we don't have to go all hell-bent for leather and crazy and be changing directions and rolling them back and spinning them around and doing all that fast and furious kind of stuff. Just slow and methodical and a little bit more meditative and yoga type stuff, so he can really feel what his body is doing and the things he needs to do to organize his body to do different things. Yes. Good boy. Yeah, good. Good. Good for you. And like I said, I won't be working him off the bit for a while, but we'll start just by working him off the halter. And then depending on the horse, I quite often will ride them in the halter for the first little while, and then I'll start to connect the halter to the bit, so they're working a little off of both. And every now and then I might have a set of reins on the halter and one on the bit, and just kind of use them both in that way. It all depends on the horse, but it'll just kind of see where we go. Good. I would say more often than not, I usually end up just kind of connecting the halter to the bit, working them that way, and then just shifting over to the bit after a while. Good boy, good. Good. Yes, good. Good. I'll start long lining him probably maybe next week. We'll give him the understanding of what it is that I'm trying to accomplish by working in hand first. A little bit of flexion, introduce him to the outside rein, encourage him to stretch down like that into the hand, pick up on the rein, smaller circle. So just focusing on the forward part. If it gets a little sticky in those smaller circles, I'm just trying to bring some energy into it so he keeps his feet moving. and always has the idea of moving forward. Whatever we're working on, there you go. That forward is always in his mind. Forward isn't, forward is just stepping through the body with some energy and some purpose. It's not fast where he's just scrambling off. And that's where a lot of people get the two mixed up. They think they're going forward, but they're really just going very quick. Good boy. Yes. Then we can start to introduce a little bit of flexion to the inside with the rein and a little bit of steady pressure on the hind. Yeah. So he really gets a pronounced bend through the body and steps through with that inside hind like that. And you don't see then when the hind leg comes just towards the other hind and they kind of get really quick like this, he steps through, carries a bit of weight here, supports himself, and lifts this leg out of the way. So it helps to really teach him some stability and not just using his hind legs to propel himself along the ground, but starts to develop the idea of him carrying with the hind legs more. Yeah. So when you go into things like whatever it may be, working towards actual collection and not just going slow with the nose in the sand, but true collection, or where you're getting into speed events or jumping or dressage or whatever the case is, and they have more carrying power from behind, a lot more athletic and agile than if they're just pushing themselves along the ground with their hind legs strung out behind them. That's obviously a long ways off, but you can start to plant those seeds and those ideas in the beginning. So then it doesn't become, let's say, if collection is what you're aiming for, it isn't something that you just come out one Wednesday afternoon and decide you're going to work on collection. Collection is something that just organically happens through preparing the horse properly through their body and their understanding. It's not good. It isn't a movement that you come out and work on one day. It's just something that over time is just there. So here, because he's a little stickier here, I have to kind of balance that inside shoulder being up with the forward, and then the steady pressure. And you can see there when he gets a little braced, yep, yes, yeah, yes. In the beginning, when he gets a little braced and drops this shoulder down and he's blocked in his body, his hind leg doesn't step through and underneath of himself. Steps either a little bit just to the outside hind, or sometimes it'll step backwards. So it's something, again, that we're not going to work on till it's perfect this morning, but this being his harder side is just something that will just start to develop more and more. So shoulder, shoulder, shoulder. One more time. Shoulder, yes. Shoulder, yes. 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 Right. Perfect. Yeah. And again, slower, deliberate, so it has meaning, it has value, he has an understanding of it, he can feel it, And then he can catalog that feeling and process that and understand what it is that he's trying to do. And he's not just kind of spinning around quickly on a circle, creating more tension and more brace in himself. Good boy. So anyway, that's just a short little bit I thought I would show you just to kind of give you an idea of where he's at and kind of the things that I like to do. I spend a lot of time, typically the first month even on the ground before I start getting on them. Not because you couldn't get on his back, but simply because to get on his back and try to incorporate all of these things with him trying to rebalance with the rider up there when he's not really strong enough and he has no understanding of what it is to do with his body, has no understanding of what our body is asking him to do. It just compounds things and makes it a little bit more stressful and more difficult for them. So if you spend enough time kind of making the explanations and giving him at least a very basic idea of what it is that we're going to be trying to work with once we get in the saddle, then you can bridge that gap a lot better than just simply getting on his back for the sake of saying that you've been riding him. Usually, more cases than not, when you do it that way, the chances of you having to go back 2 years down the road and trying to undo and then relearn the things that you probably missed in the beginning, the chances of that are a lot slimmer. And it's far quicker to do it slower now than it is to try to go back and undo a bunch of stuff and then try to redo it again. So anyway, he's doing really well. There's no concerns. We just keep working with him at his pace and kind of letting him really connect with all of this stuff and sort it out, and we just build from there. So yeah, that's about it.